Talofa, welcome to the OUM community and welcome to our OUM webinar on our financials and tuition and fees. So hello to Ali and Shelly and Dejara and Fokum, Talofa, to Grace and Hassanuddin and Hind and Jijo and Kevin. Bonjour to Lewis and Maisie, Matthew and Mahari and Michael. Kia ora to Mitch and Olu and Ravia and Renee and Santhia and Sarah. Hi, Shanda. Hello, Ms. Taffy. Bonjour to Theophile and Tivana, to Lulope, Aguchaku. Hello to Vanessa and Whitney. And hi to anyone joining us via recording. We're so happy that you've joined us today. And I'm very pleased to have joining us in our OUM webinar today Ms. Susie Robertson, who is OUM's Chief Financial Officer, as well as our bursar. Susie, would you like to introduce yourself to our attendees today?
Hello, everyone. It's always a pleasure to talk to new people who are looking to come to the university, and I find your energy and enthusiasm always so refreshing, and it's such a pleasure to talk to you and look forward to seeing you when you come to our university.
Thank you, Susie. And if you don't know me, I'm Associate Professor Nicolette McGuire, and I am OUM's Associate Dean for Student Engagement. And I'm so pleased to welcome you all as well to this session today, whether you're joining us live or via recording. So one of the reasons why we do this webinar is to ensure that you have all of the information that you need about making your decision and starting medical school. And Miss Susie, why do we think it's important that we are really straightforward and transparent about the costs surrounding our tuition and fees?
Okay, well, the hard truth of that question is medical school is expensive. It is a significant investment in yourself. It takes a lot of money and a lot of your time. And so we want you to be successful. We want you to be set up for success in our program. And so talking about money is an integral part of that. There is no escaping from the fact that we have that you're enrolling in a degree that's going to take all of your time for the next 4.5, 5 years, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. So rather than that being a surprise to you, we very much want to see you fully understand and be fully informed before you make the decision. This is, we're early days now. You're at a point where you've got lots of choices available to you. You haven't made any financial commitments at all. And so this is hopefully going to help you with that understanding of what that commitment is.
Thanks, Miss Susie. One of the things that we really strive towards at our university is ensuring that everyone has the support that they need to do well in medical school. And we really don't want you to enter medical school and be stressed about your finances and be stressed about getting through medical school. We know that our students are very well qualified, and our students are highly motivated towards getting their degrees and becoming medical doctors. But there's a lot of barriers that have been put in their way in the past, and we definitely don't want to see that happen when you enter OUM. We want to make sure that you have all of the information and supports that you need to do very well. So Ms. Susie has put together a wonderfully informative presentation today so that we can get into some of the nitty-gritty details, and you can be fully informed about some of the costs regarding our tuition and fees and when that all happens and occurs. So we do have some questions that have been submitted in advance that Ms. Susie will answer today. And if you have questions throughout the session, please use our Q&A box, and we'll take some of those live as well. We may hold some as Ms. Susie has put a lot of information in the presentation, and that just means if we're not answering the question right away, that we're going to get to it a bit later on in the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead now, Ms. Susie, and share your presentation, and you can feel free to go ahead whenever you're ready.
Lovely. Thank you, Associate Professor Maguire. Okay, first of all, this is webinar 1 of a 2-webinar series. So this is the high-level, big picture cost of doing a medical degree at Oceania University of Medicine. Over the next 2 months, you will go through an interview process. You'll get offered a place at the university if you're successful through the assessment process. And then the real commitment will come by the 1st of December when you are due to pay your matriculation fee. So this is the high-level overview of the cost of medical school. In November, we have a second webinar, and if you've been offered a place and you're about to press that spend button, this is the really detailed how it all works webinar. So some of the things I'll talk about today, I will allude to being in a lot more detail in the next webinar. So I'm trying to keep this high level, big picture, what it's going to cost you in the next 4.5 years. So just to give a bit of context between this webinar and the next one, both of which I think are really, really important to you. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide, please. Okay, there we are. That's the TTM hospital in Samoa, where you would go and do 4 weeks of your clinical rotation. So somewhere you will get to know. And moving on to the next one. Okay, so they're the things we're going to cover today. The language of the university, because we operate in Australia, New Zealand, Samoa, Canada, and the USA. We have worked out over time that we say different words but mean the same thing. So we've looked to develop a universal language that we all understand within the university. So that's a really important starting point. The program, the cost of the program, and some budgeting. I'm an accountant, so I like to talk about budgeting. The different ways that we offer for you to pay, and then at the end we'll have some time for your questions. So hopefully a lot of your questions will be answered through the course of the webinar, but at the end, anything that's not, we'll dig in then to those questions. Okay, can we move on to number 4, please?
Absolutely.
Okie doke. So here we are. These are the words that you may not have heard before. One of the words that you will hear us talk about all the time, and you'll hear me talk about through this webinar, is SIS. SIS is our bespoke student information system. So we have a system that we manage our students within the university that we have developed and that we own, and it is called SIS. So you will hear us talk about SIS. We will refer you to SIS all the time. And so I've learned after talking to people and talking about SIS and seeing blank faces that I need to very early on in our relationship let you know what that word stands for. Okay, so tuition. Now, tuition is the cost charged to earn credit points that make up your MD program. Now, that is a big confusing mouthful. Okay, to get an MD program, you earn 182 credit points. To earn those credit points, you have to purchase credits. So you purchase credits, then you get enrolled in the course, and then when you're successful in the course, the credits get attributed to your MD graduation transcript. Okay, so tuition credits, which we refer to as credits, are the units students need to purchase to access your program. Now, an important thing to note is the credit cost that you will pay includes both the cost of your tuition and the cost of universal fees. So fees that every student has to pay. So you won't be asked to pay for your credit and then pay for your library and then pay for your exam and then pay for your workshop. Okay, so within the cost that you will pay for your credit, a number of those other underlying fees are now incorporated. Now, we say that because previously it used to be charged separately, and the students used to tell me how much they didn't like that. So that's a change that we've made recently. That is very well received. So fees. So we've got two things. You pay tuition and you pay fees. Both of those are wrapped into the credit cost. Now, fees are those additional costs that you incur. Now, I've talked about the universal fees that are included in the credit cost. There are other fees that I call behavioural fees. They're fees that if you make some certain decisions, you can avoid them. Okay, if you pay on a credit card, there is a fee for that. If you lose your student card and it has to be replaced, there's a fee for that. If you pay late, there's a fee for that. Now, they're all behavioural fees. They're all things that you can make decisions about how you behave to avoid those things. Okay, so that's a group of fees that will go onto your account. Now, there is another group of fees that will go onto your account, but we cannot at this point in time include in your tuition cost because the fees are highly variable, and we haven't at this point been able to identify a fair and reasonable way to put those fees onto your account. And they are the hospital fees. Okay, so in the second part of your program, after you've done your what we call preclinical units, you will then go into clinical units, and that will involve you going into a hospital Monday to Friday and learning in a hospital environment, in a supervised hospital environment. That costs money, unfortunately. In the time that I've been here, it's gone from, in America, it was always fees. So if you're American, unfortunately, you're always paying fees, but the Australian system is just catching up. So I imagine by the time you guys go through, you can expect to pay hospital rotation fees for every week that you are on rotation, which is an unfortunate fact of life, unfortunately. Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on because I realise it is a critical consideration and it's not cheap. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide.
I just wanted to clarify, Susie. So the clinical rotation hospital fees are not fees that we're charging students to be on rotation. They're not university fees. Those are the fees that the hospitals are charging to have
Yes,
students.
they're hospital fees. So you will still have to purchase tuition credits for your tuition while you're on. So if you go on an 8-week rotation for pediatrics, and you will need to purchase 8 clinical credits for that 8 weeks, because when you're on rotation, on clinical rotation, you also have to study. So you are doing a study program in the evenings. This will be the busiest time of your life. You'll be at the hospital all day on hands-on learning, and then you'll be going home at night and you'll be studying at night as well. And so for every week of clinical rotations, you need to purchase 1 clinical tuition credit. On top of that, the doctor or the hospital that supervises you will bill us an amount per week for having you there. We will on-charge that to you.
And the hospitals or the hospital groups are the ones that set those fees. So we don't
Yes.
have control over those. And because we work with many different hospitals and many different locations, we're not able to give a specific figure about what those hospital rotation fees would be for each specific student, because it will be different depending on the student.
Well, it's depending on the hospital rather than the student. They don't look at you and decide what they're going to charge us. The
Yes, thank you
hospital.
I just mean like for prospective
Mm.
students that are here today. So I couldn't give the same information for Amanda and Shelley and Dejara, because we don't have that specific information about where you might be taking your clinical rotations and what their fees would be, because they may be different. All right, I will now go on to the next slide. Thank you for that, Ms. Susie.
Okie doke. So I imagine you already know this information, but I'm going to repeat it. There are two pathways within our university. There is what we call the standard pathway, which if you're in Australia, New Zealand, or Samoa, generally speaking, that's the pathway you're expected to take, and that will take you approximately 4.5 years. If you're in North America, to practice in North America, you must follow the USMLE pathway, and that is going to take you 5 years. Okay, so the first 2 years is the preclinical phase, and you're all the same. Everybody's in it together. You'll be enrolled in classes together. You'll be a single cohort. At that point, you then separate out, because the transition phase, which we call the clinical transition units, in Australia, that's a 6-month program that involves a 1 week in-person workshop, so you'll have to travel for, and then you'll begin clinical. If you're in North America, you will do some of the clinical transition, then you will do your first USMLE Step 1 program, and then you'll finish the rest of the clinical transition unit. And we expect that that will take you about a year. Okay, and then once you're through the clinical transition units, you will then go into 80 weeks or 72 weeks of clinical rotations. And we estimate that's going to take you about 2 years to do those 72 weeks.
And there is some further information about the preclinical and clinical phases on the website. If you have questions after looking at that information, or after talking with your admission counselor, you can type those into the Q&A box, and I can answer those as Ms. Susie is talking. Ms. Susie, would you like to go to the next slide?
Yes, please.
Anything else you'd like to say about the standard or USMLE pathways? Okay.
Okay, so these are a couple of notes about the tuition and fees. Okay, the first important note is tuition is subject to an annual increase, and that is why I cannot today give you a figure of what your program is going to cost. So every year we review CPI, we review the cost of what the program's costing us to deliver to you, and we increase the tuition by that amount. So to date, we have been able to stick with CPI increases. So CPI is generally kept in line with our cost to deliver the program to you. So, but be aware that that is going to occur every year. By September, you will be advised what the following year tuition is going to cost, or the tuition credits. Okay, so 1 September is the publishing date for the new credit point cost, and they apply from 1 January the following year. Okay, so with that in mind, you need a 5-year budget to satisfy yourself that you can pay both your tuition, fees, and your living expenses for you and your dependents for that period that you're studying. Okay, so this is a very, very important decision that you're going to make. And this budget should be a critical part of your decision making. Okay, one of the very important things to budget for is you will not be able to work in your paid profession while you're undertaking clinical rotations. Okay, remember before I said you'll be at the hospital all day and then you'll be at home at night studying. That's the reality of clinical rotations. So we see very, very capable students who fail to take that into account really struggle academically if they don't heed that. Okay, so that's something you need to plan for. Okay, next slide.
Something I also like to recommend is for the start of the preclinical. So when you begin general principles after orientation, we also recommend that students are working, students who do work are taking on a minimum amount of hours during that time. And then once they have established their study schedule and feel comfortable with the amount of material and learning, that they could add hours back into their work schedule. So that's something to think about for budgeting as well. Thanks, Ms. Susie. We'll go on to the next slide.
Okay. So here is a more detailed breakdown of your program. So you'll see there you've got your preclinical tuition credits, 102 of them, 2.5 years. And that includes both the general principles, which is your first entrance barrier, essentially, then your body systems, and then the clinical transition units. They are all what's called preclinical tuition credits. And then you will go to clinical tuition credits, and that is for your rotations. The other credit type is research tuition credits. Now, you are required as part of the MD program to complete a research module, so a learning about research, and then you are required to undertake a research project. Now, that must be published during your program. Now, as I'm the bursar and my knowledge of the program is limited to seeing people's results coming through, but not much more. I'm not able to talk to you any more about that, but it's something for you to understand and ask further questions if you have questions.
We will have a webinar coming up later this year with our Director of Research. So I highly recommend students attend, or prospective students attend that. And if you have questions before that, please direct them to your admissions counselor, or we can try and answer anything in the Q&A box tonight as well. Please go ahead, Ms. Susie.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, these are the tuition credit costs for 2026. So this is what you will be purchasing next year to pay for your program. Okay, within those costs, you are the fees that are incorporated are an exam proctor, which is your online examination tool, Clinical Key, which is an online library, extensive online library, the CTU in-person workshop, which you will not be doing till year 3. The NBME exams, if you're in North America, a final OSCE exam at the end of your program once you've completed all of your preclinical and clinical requirements. And new for 2026 onwards, you will have within your program a graduate prep program available to you. Okay, now that will be provided in Australia by an external provider. And it will be at no extra cost to you at the time when you graduate. So you will be able to access that. Now, that's another program that we've developed in response to students telling us that we've just done all this study and now we've ended up having to pay this large sum of money for a prep program at a point where our budget's expired and yet we have to find some more money to pay for a prep program. So what we've done is we've gone out, we've negotiated a prep program with an external provider. We've negotiated a price which is better than you would be able to buy yourself. And we've negotiated a program that is very specifically acknowledging who OUM students are. Okay, remembering OUM students in Australia or anywhere else for that matter, except Samoa, are international medical graduates. Okay, now a prep program for an international medical graduate assumes that you're educated somewhere else and you've never seen an Australian hospital and you don't know about the Australian health system. So that was an integral part of the existing programs, which if you're an Australian, you know a lot of that stuff already. And so the program's been reshaped to meet your particular needs. So we think that is a huge addition to your program that we're actually really proud that we've been able to put together.
Thanks, Ms. Susie. And one of the individuals spearheading that program is our Dean for Australia and North America, who has had licensure in both Australia as well as in the USA and passed the board examinations in both countries. Just a couple of details I wanted to point out before we move on. Students often ask about if there are additional fees for textbooks. And as Ms. Susie's pointed out, that second bullet there about Clinical Key being our library resource, that the cost of which is included in your tuition credits. So all of the textbooks assigned for each and every single class at OUM are available to you in Clinical Key. Clinical Key and Clinical Key Student have bookshelves. You can download all of your textbooks. You can do highlighting in there. You can have the textbooks read to you. You can have it create questions and flashcards. So you don't need to purchase any textbooks for any of your classes at OUM. They're all included in your tuition credit point cost as they're all available in our Clinical Key library. Ugo Chaku wanted to know how long does General Principles last? It's 8 weeks. And Ms. Susie, I know that you're going to answer this in a little while, but Zach wanted to know how far in advance can we purchase tuition credit points?
Okay, you can purchase, actually, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here are the, broadly speaking, three ways that you can purchase your program. There is some flexibility within this. So the ultimate thing you can do is you can purchase all of your credits after you finish General Principles next year. So you're going to purchase your General Principles credits by the 1st of December, but the balance of your program you can purchase once you pass General Principles next year. Now, you could do that beforehand, but I would strongly recommend against it. The reason I would recommend against it is because you need to understand what this program looks like for you, how it works for you, and whether it's manageable for you. Once you pay for your tuition credits, if you decide that this isn't for you, or you haven't done the work and you've failed and been dismissed from the university, you will only get a refund of 75% of what you paid. So I would be very, very careful about paying for your credits in full before you've at least done General Principles. That is I don't give financial advice because I'm not licensed to do that, but I would recommend to you as a general low risk outcome, don't purchase your credits in advance until after you've got through general principles. Once you're through general principles and you've got an idea of how it works, you're in a much better position to make a good informed decision. Okay, the next option is the opposite of purchasing all of them in advance. And that is, as you roll up to every unit, you need to have purchased the credits for that unit before you start. Okay, so that's the absolute minimum you have to purchase is before you start your unit. If you're going into cardio and it is 12 units, 12 credits, you need to have purchased 12 credits before you start cardio, or you will not be allowed to be enrolled. Okay, now you can decide, well, actually, I'm going to purchase 20 credits. And so then 12 would be used for cardio and the remaining 8 would roll on to your next unit, which I think is pulmonary. Okay, so you can have extra units in advance. You don't have to purchase all of them. You can purchase any number between what you need right here and now and what you need for the rest of your program. So it's entirely up to you. Okay, the other option that you are able to do is once you're finished general principles next year, you can elect to enroll in a monthly payment plan. Now, our SIS system knows what your program is going to be for the rest of the year, and it will add that cost together and then divide it by the number of months left in the year, and that will be a monthly payment plan for you. So you will have to pay by the 1st of the month, every month of the year. Okay, paying monthly has an additional admin fee on it. So you need to be aware of that. If you go to a monthly installment plan, it is slightly more expensive than purchasing your credit points. I think it's 2%. Now, what I would say is within SIS, and when we do our next webinar, I dig right into this and I show you all these options. There is lots and lots of opportunity for you to go and model different payment options. Okay, you can go in and you can have a look at this, have a look at that. Doesn't commit you to anything, but the system is very, very interactive to allow you to trial and see what different things are going to cost. And as next webinar, I've got lots and lots of snips and things about what it looks like inside the system and what you can investigate yourself. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide.
And Miss Susie, when you go into SIS and you start to explore some of those options, will they be personalized to you?
Yes. Yes. Well, you tell it what you want to know and it will then calculate it for you. So yes, it will have what's pre-programmed as your program. So, and that itself is personalized to you. But then you can fiddle around with how you want to pay for that. You can have a look at some different options.
And I can do all that without committing to any particular thing. I can click through.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes. All of that. It's very clear when you get to the point that you're paying. And you've got a few more clicks before you get to paying. So, yeah. We'll talk about that next webinar in great detail because this is something that I really, really want you to know and understand really well.
David said, thanks for providing some more information on the payment plan. Do they come with any fees or interest?
If you are behind with your charges on your account, interest will be applied, yes. And the admin fee is applied to the monthly plan. So they are the additional fees and interest. If you pay late, there is a late payment fee. So they're going to those behavioural fees I talked about.
And Ali wanted to know, do you save money if you purchase credits in advance?
If you purchase credits in 2026 for use in 2027, yes, you will save money. But if for any reason, and life does happen, you are not in the university and you require a refund, you will only be refunded 75%. So it's a very clear balance about where you're at. You need to be very, very honest with yourself as to how you're going and what your risks are. And that's a very, very personal decision.
Thanks, Ms. Susie. I just wanted to go back one slide as Vanessa wanted us to confirm. They say to confirm the tuition credit points table on this slide indicates a cost per 1 credit point.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted, that was a good question from Vanessa. So I wanted to make sure that was clear to everyone else as well and just re-show that because I know it's something that students like to know and our perspectives want to be clear on. So thank you for that, Miss Susie. All right, I think you were done this slide. Would you like me to go on to the next?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so this slide here is all the things that you didn't get told. So this is from feedback that we've had. These are the things that we were not clear enough with students in the past about. Okay, so these are the other things that will go on while you're in this 4.5, 5-year program that will have a financial impact for you. Okay, so you will have a in-person workshop where you will be in Brisbane in our offices for 5 days with a whole range of specialists working with you, giving you hands-on skills to prepare you to go into the hospitals. Okay, now the cost of that workshop is included in your tuition and fees, in your credit point cost. However, if you live in Perth, you have to get yourself across the country, you have to buy yourself a week's accommodation, and you can't starve during that week. We will feed you lunch every day, but you will still need to support yourself outside of that. Okay, so they're the additional costs of the CTU workshop. Okay, if you are doing clinical rotations anywhere, you should expect there will be a hospital fee, okay, per week for your clinical supervision, which is payable to the hospital. On top of that, you may have to travel for your clinical placements. If there are no placements available, if you're living regionally and there are just not placements available for the specialisms that you need, you may have to travel. Okay, and that is at your expense as well. Okay, one of the places that you will definitely have to travel in your program will be Samoa. A requirement of our program is that you spend 4 weeks on the ground in Samoa doing 4 weeks of clinical rotations. Now, this is recommended to be undertaken in your final year. Okay, that involves travel to Samoa, accommodation in Samoa, which we have support for. There's a place where our students tend to all stay, which is apparently perfectly good, and the students all stay together. There is a rotation fee in Samoa, 200 Western Samoan tala a week, which is less than $100 a week. And then there is a one-off cost for a visa as well, which none of those are particularly expensive, but they are costs. Having said that, I have not yet met a student who didn't rate the Samoan rotation as the best part of their whole MD program. To a person, that it's something that sets us apart and provides an experience that you won't get anywhere else, essentially in the Western world that we all live in. Going to Samoa gives you a unique insight. And they are fabulous people. So, but, you know, it does cost. And the final cost, just when you think you're done, is you have to complete a 1-day in-person OSCE exam. Now, that involves you coming into the office or the scheduled examination centre, which I don't know a great deal about in America, but in Australia is in Brisbane. And the cost of that exam is actually included in your tuition and fee. So you won't be charged for that. But once again, this is a very, very important exam. You're going to need to travel from wherever you live. And you are going to need at least one night's accommodation because you do not want to have to travel on the day of your exam. Okay, on the morning of your exam, you need to wake up in Brisbane ready to do that exam. So they are other costs that come up through the course of the program.
Susie, if I might just, I always like to provide a counterpoint to this because it's so important that prospective students are aware of all those things that would otherwise be like hidden fees, even though they're not fees that we're charging you. We just want those to be things that you're aware of. And even though this looks like very black and white or blue and white in the case of our branding, the things that are listed here are consistently the things that students have the most wonderful things to say. Like, these are the highlights of the student experience. The clinical transition unit in-person workshop is kind of the culmination of your preclinical years, where all of your knowledge that you've accumulated is like simmering and bubbling to the surface, and you get to have these amazing workshops with clinicians and get to like have lunch and dinners with the other students, and like the environment is so ripe and everyone is really excited because this is the culminate, like this endpoint of the CTU in-person workshop is like the end of your preclinical year. So it's a really special time for people, and they just love being in person and having that experience there together. And then the clinical placements are, I know I've been doing these webinars for a number of years, and I just celebrated my 13th anniversary teaching in our preclinical curriculum, which I love quite a lot. But I do have to say that the clinical rotations are always part of the medical degree that our students like the most, and really where they get the chance to practice and put out in the open their skills and empathy and professionalism and all of the knowledge they've worked so hard to gain in the preclinical years. And there's such a diversity of experiences that our students can have because of our locations in the United States and Canada and New Zealand and Australia and in Samoa. So it seems like, oh, it's just like all this travel and all these costs associated with it, but it's really a highlight of the student experience. And I won't make any false promises that it's not going to be difficult. It's very difficult. It's very time consuming. It takes a lot of your brain. You will take things on that you've never had a chance to experience before, but you will come out a changed person. It's really a highlight of the degree. And then the Samoa clinical rotation, I actually am teaching the preclinical reproduction class right now. Their midterm opens today. And we were talking in office hours earlier this week as we were preparing for the midterm, which is mostly about pregnancy and childbirth in the puerperium, about some of the prior students' experiences in the obs-and-gynae rotation in Samoa, which is a consistent favorite of our students because of the breadth and depth of experiences that they get to have in Samoa, that they have experiences and the things that they're able to do on clinical rotation and obs-and-gynae in Samoa are way beyond anything that they would get to do in some of our other jurisdictions. And I know that the psychiatry rotation in Samoa is very popular as well. And then the OSCE, of course, is a chance for, the final clinical examination. But again, it's like the culmination of your 4.5 to 5 years of study. And you plan so much for that, and you like get so stressed, and then you come in on the day and everybody is there to support you just like they've been throughout your entire degree, and you get to like perform at this like last clinical examination. And it's a really wonderful experience. It's really nerve-wracking, but it's really wonderful as well. And we have these lovely pictures that we take the students after they've taken their OSCEs. You can see some of those on our website. So although we have it pictured in black and white here, the things that you're going to experience along these days are just nothing that we can express in our financial webinar. I try to take the advice about, not always spending money on the things that are tangible, but on thinking about how I invest in experiences over time. And I think this is an area where it's worth pointing out. So I think it's helpful to have that counterpoint. And we talk about that a lot in our other webinars, which is why I think that it's also really important for us to be straightforward and out there with this information in our financial webinar as well. So I really thank you for putting that together, Susie. And now I'm going to stop and I'll let you go on to the next slide. Please go ahead.
I would say we've got an OSCE tomorrow, and it is one of my favourite days. It is such a fabulous day to share. And these students tomorrow, I've been here 3 years now, so I know them all. And I'm so looking forward to it. It's a day that starts really hard and gets better and better. So yes.
I love it because of the size of our university and because of the way that we work with our students individually as groups. Like we get to know each and every student, like from the time that they walk in until the time they walk across the stage on graduation. So it's really fun for us too when they have all these milestones. So I'm excited for you, Susie, for that tomorrow. All right, now please go ahead.
Back to the webinar. Okay, so the first payment that you are required to make is called your intake tuition payment. Now, it is essentially a financial commitment that you're going to join the university, and that money, every cent of it, is applied to your tuition. So it's not money you pay to get in. What you are doing is you are purchasing your 8 preclinical credits for general principles, and you are purchasing 2 research credits. As soon as you pass general principles, you will automatically be enrolled in the research module. Now, it's a self-paced module, so it will be up to you to work your way through that in your time. And then once you've done the module, you will then move on to research preparation, and other people will talk to you about that. But the important thing to remember is this intake fee that you're going to apply is what moves you from being offered a spot to matriculating in the university, getting access to the system, because once you've paid your matriculation fee, SIS is available to you. So then you can start going in, you can look at the financial systems, you can go and look at all the other academic things, which of course I don't look at because I'm not academic. But there's a huge wealth of information there that will become available to you with your payment of your intake fee. Now that is due by the 1st of December. And I don't know there's a whole lot more to say about that. So that's a number I imagine that you're very familiar with. This is the 25 credit point cost because you're purchasing these credits in 2025. Okay, so let's have a look and see what 2026 is going to look like for you. Okay, so from a tuition perspective or from an academic perspective, you're going to do general principles, and you'll see some start dates in there. So general principles will start on the 12th of January. Then you're going to do cardiovascular starting in March, urinary and pulmonary. So they're your units for your first year of your program. Beside that, you will see the preclinical credits required, except the 2 up the top beside the 8 is research credits rather than, and research credits and clinical credits have the same cost. And then by the 31st of December, you will need to have purchased another 2 research credits. So by the 31st of December 2026, you can see a total amount that you will have spent in your first year. Okay, now there's another slide coming up. Now, something that people want to know is a cost for the program. Now, you are going to get access to this slide deck. And so this is your, if you're half good with Excel and you can write a formula, this is what you need to set up for yourself to calculate your costs. So there are some variables. What do you think CPI is going to be? Okay, and hospital rotation costs. Now, I've already seen there's a question in the chat about the cost of hospitals. What I would say to you at the moment, and since I came into the program, so I've been here 3 years, when I started, there was hardly any hospital fees in Australia. What I would say now is the majority of hospitals are charging fees. I would expect that by the time you people come through to clinicals, everyone will be charging hospital fees. Now, some of them are really cheap. Some of them are $50 a week. Some of them are $400 a week. What I would say is we have our DVC out there negotiating contracts, and she is very, very focused on getting the best deal we can possibly get for the students. And so some of those things have taken longer than we would have liked, but the outcome has been better deals. So please be aware that we are acutely aware of this cost and that we are working very hard to get contracts in place with the best deal that we can manage. And that's not going to change. So that's a real focus for us. Can you go to the next slide? I'm sorry, I've got my slide up and I forget that you've got a different one.
Just while we're on this cost table, we just had a couple of questions about, Vanessa wondered if we could answer about what have been the CPI increases historically on average year on year. Maybe we could refer her and others to a resource. And he wanted to know the CPI of which country.
Okay, the CPI is related to your country. So we increase by the CPI of your country, and you will find the CPI of your country on your government's website, your country's government website. And that's the resource we rely on. So I can publish those links because I go to that every year. So each government has their own website where they publish their CPI. And that is exactly what we have increased by every year. We've not varied from that, except in New Zealand, and that's a separate situation that's quite unique because New Zealand, you will notice, are now required to pay GST on their tuition, which is a unique situation that doesn't occur anywhere else in the world. And so that's something that we've only become aware of in recent years, and we did not lift the fees by GST. So therefore, we are increasing New Zealand fees ahead of GST to get us back to where we would have been if GST didn't exist. So yeah, it's one of those things. We've taken what we believe is a fair and reasonable approach. So we're not doing so well on New Zealand fees, but we've got a 10-year plan to get to that, to get to being in line with the rest of the tuition.
And we've been transparent with our students about that.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Okay, so this is what I was referring to. I've been looking at this slide slightly longer than you guys. That is the matrix that you need to estimate a hospital, a total cost. Okay, so when you get this slide deck, this is really not for you now. That's very complex and got too much information in it. But once you get this slide deck, that's what you'll use to develop yourself a matrix and run some models. Okay, you're all very smart people. You wouldn't be doing medicine otherwise. So here's a little Excel challenge for you. Okay, let's have a look at that matrix and how it looks on some numbers I've come up with. Next slide. Okay, so I've pulled some CPI numbers out of fresh air, essentially, and plugged them in there. Our CPI in Australia this year was under 3. It has varied significantly over the years. It was 4 point something last year, but generally speaking, the near term expectation is that it will stay under 3 in Australia, but who knows? Like this is something that is well beyond our control. Okay, but using those formulas that I had on the previous slide and those CPI, which I think is probably an overestimation and an overestimation of hospital costs. I've estimated hospital at $500 a week. I would hope that that's an overestimation, to be completely honest with you. I would hope that by the time that you're there, it's not going to cost you that amount of money. But just to give you an idea, that's the sort of numbers that you're looking at. Okay, now that group is referring to the mid-year intake because it's only 20 in 2026, not 40. So we'd flick around a little bit from there. I'll update that before it comes out to you.
And again, these are for demonstration purposes.
Yep.
Do not take a screenshot and think this is the cost of the degree. This is suggests that you actually work the numbers out, and you can play around with the numbers to get an estimate of that as well. This is an estimate for demonstration purposes only.
Yeah, I would go worst and best case scenarios and then probably hope to land somewhere in the middle of that. Okay, moving on. We're running short on time. We're nearly finished. This is something that you will be familiar with. This is the gateway into our system that you will have at the moment, which is through admissions. And this is how you pay your matriculation fee. So view your account and make a payment. That's taking you into the SIS accounts, and will take you to the payment gateway and allow you to make the payment that will then matriculate you. And then your SIS view will change because you will change from an applicant to a matriculant. And you'll be able to see lots of those things that I've been talking about. Okay, and the last slide that I've got, the next webinar. Okay, so this webinar is at the beginning of November, so it's still almost a month out from when you have to make your final commitment. But by this time, you will know if you have been offered a place. And I think that's the important thing. So the people who I expect to see back here will have the opportunity confirmed that they can attend the university if they so choose. Okay, and so it'll be a much more nuts and bolts, how to use the SIS system. I'll talk a lot more about the payment options and changing between payment plans and answering very, very specific questions about payment. Okay, now I've linked there to a website that the Australian government has made available. It has a downloadable spreadsheet on it for budgeting. You can set the currency. I have used this spreadsheet with my young adult children to try and encourage them to budget. It is extraordinary. They have thought of everything. Okay, so it is an annual budget, so that you need to do a bit of work to apply that over a number of years, but it's a very, very good tool. So I commend that to you as an option. There are numerous budgeting tools available. I like that one because no one's making any money out of me when I use it. And all it's interested in is me getting the best outcome I can from my budget. Okay, so now let's have a look at the questions that we haven't answered. Okay. Okay, hospital fees, I think I've talked about that. I think you should probably budget for anywhere from 100 to 500, and it's that variable. But I would budget for a fee for every week. As I said, it started at nothing, very few fees when I started, and now most of them are charging some fees. Most of them seem to be around about the $400 mark. General principles is 8 weeks. How far in advance can we purchase credit? I think we've answered that. Yes, we've answered 1 credit point.
Miss Susie, we tried to answer most of the Q&A as we went, but we did have
Okay.
things that were submitted in advance. So I was just looking through those, and students, a couple of students wondered about studying and taking breaks. So are they able to take breaks, and are they able to pause tuition payments while they're on break?
Because we're a pay-as-you-go system, if you're not studying and you're in pay-as-you-go, if you're not studying, you won't be paying. So it's very much a while you're enrolled, you have to have paid in advance for that program. So if you're not in a program, there'll be no tuition as such. You are able to take 1 year leave of absence over the course of your program. If you're on a monthly plan and you go on a leave of absence, we go immediately and cancel your monthly plan. So it will not continue while you're on a leave of absence. And then when you come back, it'll be up to you to go, okay, I need to pick up a monthly plan again, or alternately, I will go to pay as you go now. And all of that is all able to be modeled. You're able to model that yourself within SIS.
Thanks, Ms. Susie. And each of the preclinical classes does have 2 weeks in between classes. So people just sometimes like to know about breaks. And we do also recommend that students take 2 weeks break between each of their clinical rotations, but it's not a hard requirement. And there's just a follow-up question to that from Shelley. Are there any standard holidays? So we do have a December break where the university is closed and no classes are running until the beginning of January. And because we have 5 different jurisdictions, we do celebrate holidays across all of our jurisdictions, but we continue to hold classes during holidays. If you're celebrating a specific holiday in your jurisdiction, when you have a live class, those classes are available via recording. However, if you are on clinical rotation, you would have to get information from your clinical supervisor and rotation site regarding holidays. Typically, you would not be taking holidays during your clinical rotation for publicly scheduled holidays. So we are at the end of our time with Ms. Susie, unfortunately. However, we do hope to welcome as many of you back as we're able in November to our webinar for accepted students, where we go into a little bit more details and help support you to make your initial payments and your budgeting for the first year. So I wanted to thank you, Ali and Amanda and Ankita and Anu and Shelly and David and Dejara and Edward and Grace and Hassanuddin and Hind and Jacob and Jijo and Kella and Kevin, Lewis and Maisie and Mahari and Michael and Natalie and Olu and Olusula and Patrick and Rabia and Renee, Santhia and Sarah, Tam and Theophile and Tolulope, Uchechi, Ugochakwu, Whitney, and Zach. And hello again to you, Ms. Chappie, as well. We wish you lots of luck through the admissions and interview process, which will be starting later this month, beginning of October. And if you are successful through interviews, don't forget to submit everything and have your fees in place by the 1st of December. Again, we'll have that webinar in November, so you won't miss out. You'll know everything that needs to happen in terms of your finances. And after that, we have some study skills sessions and prep coming up for your orientation week that starts in January. For any of you who are joining us today who are a little less far along on your medical student journey, we hope to welcome you back to our next webinar coming up in October, and to welcome you to a class coming up soon, perhaps in July of next year. If you have any questions about the financials that Ms. Susie talked about today, feel free to reach out to her using the bursar's email. And don't forget that your admissions counselor is a veritable treasure trove of information. I don't know how Shanda and Camille do it, but they know everything there is to know about every corner of the university. So if you haven't had a chance to connect with either of them yet, I highly recommend you fill out that form on our website to speak with them further and get all your questions answered. We're so pleased that each of you joined us today. And Ms. Susie, thank you so much for taking your time to do this webinar. It's really helpful to just have the information out there transparently. And I know that you and your small office are working daily with students individually to make sure that they get their needs met and answering all of their questions, as well as everybody's situation is a little bit different. So I really appreciate the time that you've taken to give this webinar. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for attending. I think you're really helping yourself by getting yourself well educated in what's ahead of you. I commend you for your research.
Thanks again, everyone, and see you again next time. Bye for now.